Hi, I'm Kathy Cloutier, State Senator from Brandywine 100. I'm here today to congratulate Silverside Church on its 185th anniversary. Through the years, I've attended the service and I thoroughly enjoyed the sermons, the choir, and the people that I met. So I'm giving a big shout out to Silverside Church on their 185th.
Welcome to day 2 in a 10-day celebration of the 185th anniversary of Silverside Church. This also happens to be Silverside Sunday morning for September the 6th, 2020. I am delighted that you've joined us here for this online gathering. There are some surprises here for you, as there will be every day this week. Indeed, even as there was yesterday. It's an important time in the life of our church, not just because it's a milestone, 185 years, but because it's happening when it's happening. Again, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're participating. I'm glad you're a part of this. And now, from a word from our sponsor, there will be 3 afternoon concerts, Sunday afternoon concerts, beginning on September the 13th. Each will be at 3 p.m. on the beautiful lawn of our church. On September the 13th, violin trio, mostly violin. On September the 20th, Dixieland music. On September the 27th, some rock and roll featuring 3 of our members, Brad Englehart, Bill Englehart, and Sam Michael, among others. Please bring your own lawn chair, your mask. We will have places designated so that there is the appropriate amount of space between chairs. You're invited also to stay in your car if you would like. We'll have sound so that you'll be able to hear if you're in your car. But here's an opportunity to have some fun, get out of the house, and see some folks, wave at least, and enjoy some beautiful music. These concerts have been planned by our music committee and our director of music, Melissa Hayai. They're offered for your enjoyment, your entertainment, an opportunity to bring some friends, or at least have friends follow you in their vehicles. We'd really like to have you join in. Hope that you can. Our liturgist this morning was active at the Wilmington, Delaware branch of Silverside Church. By this point in time, we have Silversiders all over the world. But Dr. Carol Puel, now Dr. Carol Puel Snyman, was an active participant in Silverside Church, Wilmington, Delaware, during the ministry of Dr. Jack Orr and during the infamous period of the Heretics Sunday School class convened by Brent Grant. Carol was one of the original faculty members, one of the founding faculty members of Delaware Tech. She's a communications specialist. She's a former nun. I dare not call her the flying nun, but somehow she ended up meeting the love of her life, Johan Snyman, who is a South African, and in addition to his professional duties in industrial engineering, I think it is, he had a vineyard, has a vineyard still, I think. And Carol and Johann fell in love. She moved to South Africa. Former nun, Silverside church member, Second Baptist Silverside church member, now a vineyard person in South Africa. She has continued her academic pursuits, um, teaching at the university level at least two universities in South Africa, as she has eased toward retirement, shall we say. She has also written a novel, at least one, and is at this very moment seeking a publisher for her novel, unwilling to change some things just to get it published. And publishers, of course, all of them are just about making a dollar, regardless of the sacrifices they ask authors to make. So Carol might consider self-publishing, but that decision hasn't been made yet. There's been interest in it, but she hasn't signed it over to a commercial publisher yet. I had the tremendous privilege of getting to know Carol because our member, Dr. Trudy Burrell, said, I think the next time Carol is in from South Africa, the two of you should meet because I think you two would hit it off. And boy, was that ever the truth. From the moment we first started chatting, Carol and I have shared a friendship across the miles, and sometimes it's been years between our meetings, but we've managed to keep in touch. And I have a deep appreciation for who she is, who she's been throughout her life, her enthusiasm for life, her investment in life. Yeah, and you're going to hear her right now share some readings for our gathering this very day.
From me, Dr. Carol Puhl, distance member of Silverside Church, living in South Africa. I offer two parts, one drawing from traditional African spirituality based in nature, which Christianity built upon, and the other from 1 Kings, to congratulate and reflect on Silverside Church. First, a prayer of the indigenous Khoisan people. Quote, when the moon dies every month, let the sin in me die with it. When the moon is reborn each month, let the good in me be reborn with it. One such Khoisan community rephrased the 10 Commandments, and here are a few as they see them. 1, our Lord is jealous if you go searching for another Lord. 2, you may not build or hunt on the Lord's day. 3, see that your pa and your ma can always relax in coolness and have many nama berries to eat. 4, you may not take another man's calabashes or goats. 5, you may not look at another man's things with long eyes. Second part for Silverside Church and its impact on me, from the book of 1 Kings. The prophet Elijah came to the holy mountain and went into a cave to spend the night. Then the Lord said, go out and stand before me on top of the mountain. Then the Lord passed by and sent a furious wind that split the hills and shattered the rocks. But the Lord was not in the wind. The wind stopped blowing, and then there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was the soft whisper of a voice. When Elijah heard it, he covered his face with his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance to the cave. Blessings and thank you.
We do not get to an historical marker like this on our own. That is more than obvious. But neither should we attempt to celebrate such an achievement as if the only people who matter are the people who happen to still be around when 185 years is checked off the calendar. Those who have gone before us matter tremendously, and not in a way that would have their faces etched into the side of a mountain so that people could come and remember their accomplishments. It is much more profound than that, particularly in a spirituality community, like it is also true of a family unit. We're here celebrating this week 185 years this congregation has been around. And real people struggled and dreamed, took risks, sacrificed financially, argued, debated, lost friends, made a few. Went through periods of time wondering if the efforts of thinking about a better way were worth their energies. Oh, by this point in time, we can't even imagine how many people sacrificed so that we can still be here doing what we do in the way that we do church, the way that we do spirituality. We celebrate an anniversary such as this, a birthday such as this, from the perspective of profound gratitude, even with memories of names we will never know. In the shorter term past, there are names we do know, however. We start thinking about the significance of heritage by thinking about our own parents. In Carol's reading from one of the indigenous tribes in Africa, setting the Ten Commandments to their cultural context, the commandment that is translated from Hebrew into English to say, honor your father and your mother so that your days may be long upon the earth, comes across in the culture that provided the commandment, as Carol read it, is keep Ma and Pa cool in that scorched continent. And that was even before global warming. Keep Ma and Pa cool. And keep those nama berries coming. I don't know what a nama berry is. I'm going to ask Carol the next time I talk to her. I would imagine something luscious and juicy and healthy. Huh? Your parents made a way for you. And you make a way then for your parents. For those who have gone before you. That commandment is widely misunderstood. And those of you who've been around Silverside for a while have heard me mention this on more than one occasion. That commandment is not a commandment for kiddies. My parents used it on me a number of times to try to get me to behave myself. And I was a pretty good kid, by the way, and I'm not kidding about that. I can get witnesses and references if you don't believe me. But if I were getting out of hand in their point of view, and I wasn't quite out of hand enough to get threatened with a whooping from Dad, Mother didn't whoop. She might switch or fly swat. And I don't recommend any hitting of children today. But this was a culture a handful of years ago in the South. They would say, honor your father and your mother, meaning I should do exactly what I was being asked to do on the timetable envisioned by my father in particular, which was almost always instantaneous. Honor your father and your mother was a commandment for adult children. A reminder that adult children didn't get to be adults. With opportunities and responsibilities on their own. Their parents got them there to a great degree, and therefore it was their responsibility, their sacred responsibility to care for their parents, to see to their parents. When the parents were no longer in a position to be providing for them. Keep Ma and Pa cool. And keep those nama berries coming. In the last little while, we've lost to this church and this world a lot of those who were church parents and grandparents. When I came 20 plus years ago, others of you have very recently lost parents who were not members of this church. We express our deep sympathy both to Jane George and Priscilla Wilson. And there are those who have lost loved ones during this pandemic who have not been able to say the kinds of formal or even informal goodbyes they would like to say to their amazing parents who were church parents too and grandparents. Bobby Jolly and Ann Reese and DJ Gibson and Marion Simons. This church did not get to be where it got to be without those risk takers and amazing folks like Jane George and Priscilla Wilson and Carter and Mary Carlton and Dick and Marilyn and Roger Jolly. These amazing people did not get to be who they are and where they are today without parents like they had. This church, so blessed. And a key part of our celebration during this 185th anniversary week of celebrating is not to say we did it. Wow, look what we can do, or it's enough. Let's call it a day. None of that stuff. But everything we did to some extent, we did because of the contributions of those who have gone before us, parents, church parents, grandparents. I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the preaching of Theodore Parker Ferris, who for 30 years or so was the rector of Trinity Church in Copley Square in Boston. Long before Theodore Parker Ferris arrived on the scene, the great Phillips Brooks had been the rector in that church. You probably don't recognize the name Phillips Brooks, but every Christmas Eve you probably sing one of his hymns, O Little Town of Bethlehem. Phillips Brooks was a powerful influence both in church and society during his day, and though Ferris was a powerful force in his own right, in some reflections he wrote once upon a time, he credited Phillips Brooks for laying the foundation on which he was able to do everything he said Ferris said he was able to do. It was like standing on the shoulders of someone in a thick crowd, a parade, for example, so you could see what was going on. We are standing on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. I hope you heard Walt's reflections on Saturday to begin this week of celebrations, and his powerful, thoughtful, poignant reflections on the minister Raymond Baker, who influenced him as a young man. And what a product, huh? What a product Walt Stapleton turned out to be. But he recognizes that those who came before him, and I know that Walt would also add his parents to that list if we were to talk about it at length, made his remarkable accomplishments possible. We got to this place And the folks in recent years have done tons of work and taken their share of risks and licks on the chin as well, but we are still standing on the shoulders of those who came before us. Let us be grateful. When King Herod realized that the Magi had come to honor a little boy who was said to be the one who would grow up to become king of the Jews, which was his job, and one that he apparently thought he would never give up, that he would live forever to continue fulfilling. Herod went into a rage and did some math and figured that the little boy they were talking about had to be about 2 years old. This story we hear about during the Epiphany season in early January most of the time, but nonetheless, here we have it now. And Herod went into a rage and figured he would do away with this little boy. He didn't know exactly who this little boy was. It was Jesus of Nazareth, of course. Nor did he or the Magi, for that matter, understand the kind of king, kind of king that Jesus would become. Never any kind of an earthly ruler, but that didn't matter to Herod, nor did he know it, as I said. So Herod's solution was to just simply kill off all the little boys 2 years and under. And when that terror was done, The writer of Matthew remembered that when many of the Hebrew children were taken into exile, this verse that you see on the screen was originally used in that context. Rachel representing all the mothers at the time. A voice, actually many voices, of course, was heard in Ramah, wailing and loud lamentation. Rachel, all the mothers, weeping for their children. They refuse to be consoled because their children are no more. They're in exile. Now, when this slaughter of the innocents, as this dastardly deed came to be called, occurred, the writer of Matthew, as I said, remembered that reflection from the prophet and applied that saying or that remembrance to the situation. So originally applying to children taken off into exile, now applying to children murdered by a crazy king. A voice was heard in Ramah. This time the mothers in and around Bethlehem, Galilee. A voice was heard in Ramah. Many voices, wailing and loud lamentation. Rachel, mothers of all the little boys, 2 years of age and younger, weeping for their children, and they refuse to be consoled because their sons are no more. To those of you who have lost your parents most recently, we extend our profound sympathies, and we continue to surround you with our prayers and positive thoughts, and we will continue to do that. Any of you who have lost one or both parents know what kind of pain that is like, that endless throbbing pain. And many of us who become mature, refined, and maybe even dignified adults don't let out our real pain when we lose those who have given us life. Well, she lived a good long life, we think, and probably somebody thought to say that to us. As pointless a comment as that is, somebody was trying to have something kind to say. Doesn't matter how old your mother or father were when they died, you still lost your mother or your father, and the pain is still real. And we contain it. Most of us, many of us, too many of us, and we should not. Someone should say of us when we lose our parents, and this goes for those who have lost parents to the coronavirus as well, to people all over the world who have lost their parents to the coronavirus. A voice is heard in Wilmington and around the world, wailing and loud lamentation, grown children weeping for their parents. They refuse to be consoled because their parents are no more. Many of those whose shoulders on which we have symbolically stood in this church, we have lost so many in the last few years, and the pain is intense, and we cry out in our grief. And we will not pretend, even on a day of celebration, that losing them eventually doesn't matter. It will always matter. We move along into the future with a mixture of pain and appreciation, grief and growth. We carry our grief for having lost them with the growth that became possible because of what they told us and how they stood with us and the examples they set for us. But the pain will not go away because our lives are intertwined, were and are intertwined with theirs. And not to have them in this world with us left and leaves an emptiness that simply will not be filled. We will not become preoccupied with the loss. We will not become morose about it or macabre. We will move ahead and we will live positively and productively with many of the tools and inspirations we gained from these parents and church parents, our biological parents. Yes, yes, we will, because to give up, to just fall into pure grief and despair is absolutely no way to honor the memories and the contributions of those who have gone before us. And so, with courage, despite the pain, we move ahead and we create new realities. But always, always those are possible because of the contributions to us from those who came before us. I invite you to pray with me just now in your way. Praying is the sharing of positive thoughts, which are love energies. God's love toward us. That is love energy as well. May we pray. Gracious God, we are profoundly thankful for all the gifts that we have inherited because of the efforts of those who have gone before us, because of the foresights of those who have gone before us, because of the sacrifices for those who have gone before us. We're grateful to be a part of this congregation that is making the most of what it has inherited. And we are grateful today, gracious God, for those who are sidetracked from the normal goals of their daily lives, not only by the pandemic, but also more recently, on top of the pandemic, the loss of loved ones. We are grateful for your presence with those who struggle. We're grateful for your loving leadership in the lives of those who right now are making a difference, right now are making a difference in this world. And down the pike, somebody's going to look back. And whether a name is remembered or not, know that this terrible chapter in history in which we find ourselves will have an ending out of which not everyone will be overcome by this pandemic. We give you thanks for the privilege and the opportunity of living in a time when we can know about the teachings of Jesus because of those who struggled to pass along what he taught. And may we never take for granted the gift that is ours because of the many sacrifices of those who risked passing along his teachings, which have changed the world and will continue to change the world to the extent that we're willing to live them out. Indeed, simply listening to them doesn't make a whole lot of difference. But as with our forebears here in Second Baptist Silverside Church, we will attempt with our best efforts, regardless of the risks, to live out his teachings and his example. Amen.